NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan hopes that inflation will ease starting next month as food supply is expected to improve.
The Bangko Sentral raised interest rates by half a point for a second straight meeting. The BSP's new rate hike came after inflation zoomed to a fresh 14-year high of 8.7% in January.
We are hoping that we see a plateau already of that inflation and next month kasi January, February, March that's a good harvest season for our farmers and if we did not have any major typhoons during the last few months.
The Bangko Sentral chief says the Maharlika Investment Fund is now, quote, more acceptable. How so? And what about his projections for inflation and interest rates as the economic figures for the month of February reveal? We sit down with Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medalla tonight on the Chiefs. Natin online, Ed Lingao of One News, Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief ng Philippine Star, and Lucy Cruz Valdez, Head of News 5. Chiefs, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Ami, daming nangyari nung weekend. Anong inuumpisahan natin?
Pero ngayon muna, mukhang masama, mukhang hindi happy next week, ano? Nag-warning yung mga jeepney drivers and jeepney operators. 1 week long nationwide strike down next week.
Galit eh.
Ang program, mukhang itutuloy.
Mamaya, pag-uusapan natin yan. We will touch on that later on in the program. Ikaw, LCV, what's noteworthy for you? Both yung today and also over the weekend.
Well, yung con-con, no? Parang talagang pina-finalize na nila. At sa House at least, no? At isasabay daw nila yung botohan for the delegates sa barangay elections in October. So mukhang seryoso na sila na ituloy ito. So kaabang-abang din yan kung i-carry din sa Senate.
And then before we completely move on from that topic, Bok, yung People Power celebrations, may sumingit pa na magandang malaking balita rin yun nung Saturday. President Bongbong Marcos, di ba? I mean, acknowledging EDSA and even offering a wreath at the EDSA monument.
Yeah. Words of words that apparently that appear to be reaching out to all sides of I don't know if we call it a conflict. Pero things are the words are quite different from what we've been hearing the last 6 years under the previous administration, which is surprising.
Anyway, we will have more reasons to talk about those things. Among other things, mamaya nga pag-uusapan natin yung nabanggit ni Ami, especially sa jeepney sector. But we will start off with speaking with Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medalla. Don't miss that. The Chiefs will be right back after a short break. Keep it here on One News. after numerous revisions, is the Maharlika Investment Fund more acceptable now? Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medalla thinks so, and we speak with him now. Welcome back to the Chiefs, Governor Medalla.
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you
Good
po
evening,
for
sir.
joining us. Sir, diretso na ako. Everybody keeps saying, oh, si Felipe Medalla has changed his tune. But the reality is this fund has changed a lot also. Maybe to recap and speed us along the evolution of this, I want to start with this. Is the Maharlika Investment Fund still a sovereign wealth fund?
Well, actually, that was the basic objection to the term W, because the government is a net borrower, the country is a net borrower. So, in other words, to invest, we must borrow. So, therefore, the real good reason for it is that more strategic investments can be made. And by the very nature of our political system, which my friend, national scientist Raul Fabella calls divided by N. Whatever money you have, you divide by N. You will never have a strategically allocated capex. So that's the very nature of our politics. So in a sense, there is a justification if a fund can be used to make strategic investments. For instance, I think the privatization of transmission might have been a bad move. It's too strategic. And then, of course, selling it to the Chinese from a security standpoint. So maybe it's a good use for this fund to buy it back. Okay. Also, there is quite a bit of the entire rich world is very worried about greenhouse gases. And if we will have investments there, maybe that fund can attract foreign investments because they can get the carbon credits. So now that it's an investment fund, then most of my objections, for instance, I was initially afraid that they would say the reserves of the central bank will finance it. Of course, even more worrisome is they use SSS and GSIS money. I think those features are gone. So really the issues now are how can you improve the ability of this fund to make our investments, increase investments in strategic areas, and possibly, as in the case of Indonesia, attract foreign money.
But the question is how to attract the investors. I mean, for example, if you're talking about investments in greenhouse, is there? How do you communicate that that's precisely what you're going to be using the investment money for? And
well, I cannot speak for the executive branch and the legislative branch, but I'm sure they're thinking about it.
Governor,
Indeed, the discussion that I heard was, for instance, Senate President was against doing IPO because he was afraid that the businessmen who will buy the shares may not be in line with the strategic objectives. So maybe the entire idea is to find strategic partners whose interests align with ours. Okay, so if, for instance, let's say, I don't know what it is, like electric buses, which is good for reducing
Governor, your signal seems to be breaking up. Did we lose him?
Yeah,
which at the same time reduces greenhouse gases. So eventually, had heard to take the old National Development Corporation. And the answer is, well, it does not be able to achieve a lot. So maybe a fresh start is necessary. Nag-freeze.
Opo.
Yeah, okay. Am I clear?
Opo. Go ahead, Ami.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Ami.
Governor, nag-wrap up ng Senate ng discussions on the Maharlika Fund, no? And you mentioned na hindi na hahawakan yung reserves of the BSP, but ang sinabi kanina, they're still expecting funding. There's still debates on the funding source. So they're still planning to tap the Land Bank, 50 billion, Development Bank, 25 billion, and BSP daw for 17 billion.
Okay, let me discuss all three.
Yes.
Saan manggagaling yung pera ng Land Bank at DBP? Hindi sa loans. So most likely, they will reduce their investment in securities. But then, most of the securities they buy are government securities. So therefore, the government has to find new buyers of its funds. So if you do that, then maybe it may actually slightly increase yields.
Yes.
On the other hand, the money from BSP does not belong to BSP. It's the dividends, they belong to the national government.
Yes.
And therefore, it's funding the deficit of the national government. So it goes to the fund. Then the national government, again, has to find
Sources.
additional support.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying the justification for it is that moving the money to the fund will result in more strategic, higher return spending. Because you're actually just moving money from one pocket of government to another. So either the spending in the regular government is going to be reduced, or they have to find new financing source.
Well,
How did the...
asking nga pareho lang naman daw yung functions na binabalak under the Maharlika and the functions of the government financing institutions. What do you say to that? They'll be duplicating functions daw, and why do you have to set up the fund then under a different management?
But I think the issue is the extent to which this will be better than NDC. Because it's really just, when I look at the rest of the government, the closest thing that I could see that resembles it is the National Development Corporation.
How was it? How did the NDC not work in a way that this one could?
Well, I suppose in the competition for funds, it didn't get as much. Now, presumably, since this fund is in the high priority of the president, it will be a bit more successful.
But then to that point, sir, then what happens to the NDC? Yeah, parang, and also,
Well,
parang if the whole point lang is... Yeah, sorry.
I don't know the answer to that question, but the way it looks, its contribution is very marginal.
Okay.
So in other words, if this is a superior version of NDC, then it has a chance of contributing positively. Indeed, when I was first interviewed, my main worry was what happens after.
Yes.
For instance, not what happens now. For instance, the Malaysian problems did not start immediately. It may take the next president or the next to the next. So I think, but at the same time, the discussion on governance, I think, has increased attention. And therefore, if the fund is structured with better governance, and in particular, let's say if the fund can attract strategic partners like IFC of the World Bank and the investment arm of the ADB, the fund may actually be superior
Yes, sir. But
to
sir, if you go by the words of Congressman Salceda, we're looking at more private sector-led funding, less than half coming from government, but with the public or government guidance. Now going,
Yes, yes.
now going to your point, what really would be important is what happens in the future, given the Malaysian experience. How do you guard against that? I mean, it's so far down the line, and at this point nga, we're still grappling with the ano ba talaga yung nature ng Maharlika Fund na ito.
Well, as they say, the cost of democracy is eternal vigilance. I mean,
Yeah, but-
it's our duty also as citizens to
but
keep watching.
I mean, not to be glib about it, sir, but we're also vigilant on so many fronts already. I guess that's the question of people. We get that as citizens, as media people, we have to be vigilant on everything. But why add another front for us to be vigilant about?
No, but in this particular case, for instance, if you bring in partners like the IFC, it will be built in. So it really matters who the partners are.
Well, if they're planning to bring in a lot of private investment, National Treasurer Rosario De Leon says that the private sector should not have a say in running the fund. Wag daw isama sa board and it can be incorporated. Basta wag daw magkaroon ng controlling voice yung private investors. Wouldn't that turn, well, the other side of the argument is it might turn away potential investors from the private sector.
But the other side of it is the fear is that the conglomerates are already powerful enough as it is. So that's the other thing. That's why I agree with Romy Bernardo that the key is to have credible multilateral institutions as partners. And which is actually very possible the way it's currently structured.
Okay.
Indeed, I think the view of many senators is precisely don't IPO, but focus on getting strategic multilateral partners.
You agree with that, sir? You agree with that? Huwag mag-IPO?
Yes.
Well, may debate. I think one side says IPO, another side. I've heard both sides. No? The other side don't.
Governor,
Yes,
it's clear already who will run the fund. Kasi yun din ang tinatanong naman ng mga investment banker.
Okay.
The biggest question.
Okay,
Who will run the fund? Who will I interact money to?
I think they're seriously looking for a person of great competence and honesty. They're seriously looking. And the question is, given who wants to make this mark?
And there may be people who are interested in it, but we've been speaking with a lot of people also from the academia and also from the private sector who's saying that if I would be interested in it, I would want to be very, very clear what's the objective of this fund. Based on what you're saying, it's much clearer now that it's a development fund. No? It's going to be, so it's no longer about the growth of the fund itself. I mean, are the objectives that much clearer now? It actually goes to my earlier question also of,
Yes,
again,
yes.
just to put that a point, this is no longer a sovereign wealth fund.
The key really is who is its first leader. That will set the tone. And I think I've heard the president has been really, and I heard that one person he approached, who I respect, who I respect a lot, was afraid of the job. You know? So to me, in a sense, it is a great challenge. And if it succeeds, the first set of people in the fund are patriotic and highly skilled people, then So let's judge the fund by who the first set of people will be.
But do you think that this is something that is imperative? Or are you just saying, in effect, that it has become less unacceptable? I mean, what I'm saying
No,
is,
I'm saying-
are you at a point also where you're saying, even if it doesn't push...
Is it a must-have?
Yes.
Is it a must-have?
Yes.
Well, if the size is very small, then it's really more like a training vehicle. So that's the problem. On the other hand, the size is large, many people will be scared. Right? So I think that is the sort of conundrum, right? If it's too large to make a difference, then people will be scared. If it's too small, then all you do is now set up
hardly any effect.
set up the team for future bigger action.
Okay.
But in a sense, though, it's not. In other words, it's not a must-have, but it's not something that. Well, it's worth a try.
Yeah, but
Depending on who will be its first leader and its first board. I think if you see the names, you will know. Well, I will not mention which names. I'll say, oh, nakita ko yan, ayaw ko na. And the other hand, at the same time, there must be good people in this country that could be attracted.
Sir, if I may, I just...
Parang it sounds like, it almost sounds like you're not that excited about it. Sabi nga ninyo, it's not something that we want.
Well, I'm too old to be excited about anything.
Let me take it from the other side. Like, same question actually as Lucci, but baliktarin ko lang. If we just forget this whole thing, what among the objectives can our government not do with all the agencies, development bank, land bank, all our development investment vehicles, all our development instruments? If we just forget this Maharlika Investment Fund, what exactly are we hamstringing government on?
Well, as I say, it's not, I don't think this is a matter of life or death, right? But at the same time, I think the president who got 58% of the vote deserves a room for learning by doing. Because after all, our country has tried so many things. I'll give him a shot. That's my view. And also, it's not a good idea that a project the president has really thinks will. I think, my own analysis is he really thinks it's good for the country. So let's give him a shot.
Yes, sir. Sir, if I may, what if I try to reframe it this way? If you do a risk-benefit analysis, anong mas matimbang po?
Well, as I said, I will look at the first set of people, and given the scrutiny that this project has been through, I think the effort to get the highest quality people will be there. So, kasi grabe ang attention eh. You cannot have a huge orchestra sa tatatang, tang, tapos ang lalabas daga, So I think, that the current situation, there is a must perform attitude, which I would encourage in this particular case. If the president is putting his reputation on the line, and obviously he will try very hard to get the best people.
What if?
Now, whether he will
Yeah.
Whether he will succeed or not, I don't know. For instance, suppose you're a top class person headhunters want for the big conglomerates. Will you forsake the offers there and move to this fund? So I think. So my view is okay. We will see quickly by who are appointed. At least how good it will be under the term of President Marcos. Now, what will happen after
Yan na
this
nga eh.
term? Let's worry about that later.
Governor, we're running out of time. Pahabol ko lang. The BSP is planning to stop the fees for small value fund transfers. Meron na bang timeline for this? Are you
Wala pa. No, ang real problem is there is a cost.
Yes.
Right? But at the same time, all the things we do have a cost. Like we have to we have to make coins. So the point is, maybe if the shift to this one will give us a lower cost alternative to printing coins, minting coins, and printing money, then the BSP has savings. Now, therefore, the BSP is incentivized to find a way to make this a substitute for the 1,000-year-old technology that we have, which is coins and paper bills. And that's a good reason for the BSP to say, hey, private sector, you do this, we might cut reserve requirements. We will compensate you. If you do this, we may cut supervisory fees. So, and I think the BAP has read my message very clearly, and they seem to be looking to an alternative. Now, of course, the incentive system for the non-banks is quite different. For instance, if you're GCash or PayMaya, where this is your main business, not your side business, then what drives you to come along, right? But I think they too have an incentive to come along, because if transactions take place, then lending that is based on transactions data will start to grow. And here the new players have an advantage. So I think the principal e-money players and the banks are now sufficiently incentivized. Because the simple point is, if you're paying 200 pesos for something, you cannot. It's a bad idea to pay a 20 peso fee, right? So if you're taking a tricycle, and you use your phone to make a payment, clearly the transaction fees are sufficiently high to discourage. So that's why we want it to be free, both on the merchant side, because in some cases it looks free, but it's not. Okay. For instance, if you use your credit card, you think it's free, but in reality, the merchant pays what?
Yes.
2%, which is not really free.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that's the goal. And I my own experience as a monetary board member is that our bankers have enlightened self-interest.
Sir?
They take a longer run. They take a longer view in promoting self-interest. Because they've been around for a long time, and they're operating in a fairly stable and predictable environment.
Sir,
And also there's a regulator. Yeah? Yes.
Sige pa. We'll just use this to zoom out on the economy in general. We wanted to ask you also your thoughts on and projections on inflation. Did we peak na in January, 8.7%? What do you see in the coming months?
Well, in all likelihood, but then I will not bet my entire monthly salary. Okay. So, for instance, the last inflation surprised us in both year-on-year and month-on-month. indeed, the most surprising is the month-on-month. 1.7% higher than the previous month. Annualized, that's 15%. So, but the reason I am optimistic is now finally we see imported sugar coming in. Remember, Lucado Sebastian was thrown under the bus for saying the obvious. So I think the pressure now, well, this is my own information. Jokno and Balisakin are working their tails off to get more imports in.
So imports lang ba yun, sir? Kasi ang
Well,
dami rin mga ibang cost, di ba? Well,
But dalawa. Yung isa are the things that became more expensive globally.
yes.
Yung the other one is the surprisingly high economic growth also meant higher demand.
Yeah.
So tatlo ang sources, ano? And then of course food and non-alcoholic beverages. That's very high. Add to that transport, housing, and utility.
So how is it
So,
looking now? I mean, moving forward, are we going to see a drop?
The thing about supply shocks is that they cannot fuel inflation for a long time. Indeed, before this happened, the longest consecutive number of months of above target inflation was 15. Now, this is quite unusual. This could be as long as 20. Now, of course, if it's 24, I probably bang my head against the door. So the outlook now is, well, 20 straight months where we may miss. It's a terrible thing, a combination of many things. Economy that's surprisingly stronger, the Ukraine war, bad weather. Then, of course, very, very protectionist sugar. You notice that in some cases, some bottling companies had to close shop because they had no sugar.
Yes, sir.
My view here is don't politicize importation decisions. If you want to protect the industry, debate on the tariff. Do not let a non-transparent system of permits determine how much and when the imports, how much it will be imported and when. Because that's a formula for disaster historically. Mistakes will be made. And of course, people suspect that it could also be used for cartelization. Yung mga kaibigan lang ang makakakuha ng permit. Tapos yung mga kaibigan, sabay-sabay na mag-under-report. Pero bago nila ginawa yun, nabili muna sila. That was the bawang story kay Alcala and President Aquino. But wait, by the way, that was an NBI report. Okay, so transparency, the most transparent way to protect an industry is a tariff. Of course, kailangan mo smuggler. The funny thing is right now, the smugglers seem to be our friend. No? At least there's a smuggler may papasok. Pero when you turn smugglers into heroes, there's a problem.
Okay.
Yes, sir, I'm looking right now at the Agri Department's price monitoring watch for today. Refined sugar is still high at up to 110 per kilo, and rice still at 37 to 40 pesos. Medyo mababa yung sibuyas.
But the difference, as you can see, between the increase in the price of rice and the increase in the price of sugar. See, in one case, anybody can import. And what the increase in the price of sugar says is maybe world prices are going up a little bit. On the other hand, there was a month when the increase in the price of sugar was year-on-year 100%. So, by the way, the loss to government is large because the taxes on soft drinks are a large source of revenue. So I think this is the question we have to ask ourselves. It's good to protect, but when you protect somebody, you hurt somebody else. At what point is the cost of protection far in excess of the benefits?
Okay. Governor Medalla, sir, maraming salamat po sa oras ninyo.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Governor.
sir.
Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat din.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
DSP Governor Felipe Medalla. Now, let's talk about the planned massive transport strike against the consolidation deadline for the PUV modernization program. That's next on the Chiefs. Stay with us. Transport groups are threatening to hold a massive strike next week, but the DOTR is appealing for a dialogue first. Joining us on the program, Mar Balbuena, Chairman of the Transport Coalition Manibela. Magandang gabi, Mar. Welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good evening, sir.
Sir Robby, Sir Ed, and Ma'am Lucy, Ma'am Ami. Good evening po sa ating lahat.
Sir, umpisa natin dito sa panawagan na magwelga. Wala na bang atrasan yan? Tuloy yan? Or tatanggapin nyo ang panawagan ng DOTR na, teka muna, baka pwede pa natin pag-usapan?
Ano po kaya yung pag-uusapan? Pero sabi nga natin po kanina, hanggat hindi po nila binabawi yung memorandum circular po na inilabas nung nakaraang linggo, tuloy na tuloy po kami, Sir Robby.
Anong makakapagbago ng isip ninyo in terms of the deadline? Pagka ba yan in-extend na naman, ititigil niyo yung strike? Or ano bang mga, kumbaga, anong bargain? Anong inaanok ninyo?
Actually, Ma'am Lucy, marami na po yung sumusunod doon, nagpo-comply doon sa gusto po ng LTFRB, ng gobyerno. Kaya lang po, minsan yung mga memorandum circulars o yung mga nilalabas nilang panuntunan o guidelines ay hindi po talaga makatao. Bukod doon, bigla-bigla na lang pong puputulin, on process ka. Niloloko po nila yung transport sector.
Anong halimbawa?
May kwento ko lang,
yeah.
kahit may tip.
Sige, kwento mo.
2019, 2018, nung pinagko-comply, hindi po maintindihan. Kahit po ako, hindi ko maintindihan yung franchise consolidations, anong mangyayari. Bukod dun sa mahal na pautang at mababaon lang kami sa utang, hindi po ito na ipaliwanag ng LTFRB. Nakita niyo po ba ang LTFRB na bumaba po sa transport o nagpatawag po ng seminar sa lahat po ng stakeholders? Wala pong nangyaring gano'n. Ngayon, nung naintindihan po namin kahit papaano, during pandemic, kahit wala po kaming pangtustos dito, Ma'am Lucy, pinilit namin na makapag-comply. So 2020, humabol kami doon sa pangalawang pagkakataon na ibinigay sa atin hanggang 2021, and suddenly March or April ng 2021 bigla nila pong pinutol po yung consolidation. Kahit on process na, nakapagbayad ka na, pumila ka at nagpakapagod ka, na bigla na lang hong itinapon yung aplikasyon namin. Tapos ngayon, bibigyan mo kami ng 3 buwan, 4 na buwan. Kung hindi kami makakapag-comply, hindi na kami makakapag-renew ng PA at mababasura na at tuluyan na kami mapipace out. Napaka pangit man pong sabihin, hindi ko nababanggitin na talaga pong ang hirap po tanggapin nung panloloko po, panlilin lang po sa atin na 3 months, 4 months, napaka-unrealistic. Yung 2020, 2021 nga po, na medyo nagluwag na nung 2021, halos 1 taon po kami nagko-comply. Hindi nga po natapos.
Sir Man, para lang po malinaw, kasi sabi niya 2021, biglang pinutol.
Ano yung pinutol? Oo.
Yung consolidation po, pinutol, Mama Sir Ed. Nagko-consolidate na yung mga tao po eh. Yung mga naiintindihan po yung programa eh. Tapos bigla po itong kinat, ang gusto po ng sarili po na, nagko-comply po kami doon sa sarili naming transport cooperatives o transport corporation. Pinutol, naglabas ng bagong MC na sumama na lang kami doon sa mga nauna.
Nag-change procedure, sir? Nag-change procedure ba? Ganon? Yun yung sabihin?
Nag-change procedure po, nag-change po ng guidelines at pinigil po ito na totally mag-consolidate na lang kami doon sa mga nauna sa
back to square one, ang ibig sabihin.
Back to square one. So yung tinayo naming transport cooperatives, nawawalan na po ng saysay dahil doon sa nauna po, magme-membro po ulit kami doon sa mga nauna.
So meron silang mga ina-credit lang, parang ganon, na mga kooperatiba, na doon lang kayo pwedeng makiisa, ganon.
Tama po kayo. Tama po kayo, Ma'am Luchi.
So kung ibabalik
At napakabigat po, no?
kung ibabalik
Dati po,
natin yung
one route, one cooperative. Ngayon po, one cooperative, multiple routes. Volume po yun.
Okay.
So kung gusto kong maibalik yung one route ninyo and one cooperative, baka kaya matigil yung strike na yan?
At least po, Ma'am Ami, noong naglabas po ng pronouncement si Chairman Guadis, natuwa po kami dahil ang sabi niya, hindi naman po maikakaila sa atin na minsan merong hati talaga ang opinion ng ating mga kasamahan po sa transportasyon. 2 hanggang 3 entity po, depende po dun sa dami. 2 hanggang 3 asosasyon. So kung i-convert mo po ito sa transport cooperatives, 3 kooperatiba o 2 po sa isang ruta. At least.
So kung gano'n,
Hindi na po yun ang nangyari ngayon. Doon sa memorandum circular, kailangan na po namin mag-join doon sa mga na-credit nilang na.
so kung ibabalik sa dati, isa yun sa mga gusto nyong mangyari para hindi
Tama
na
po.
yan.
Tama po kayo, Mama Amina. Ganun po yung panawagan natin. Sabi nga natin, hindi po tayo tumututol doon sa pagbabago.
Ang sabi nila, ang tagal-tagal na daw pinag-uusapan yung modernization. So realistically, gaano katagal pang kailangan ninyo para maka-perform ng cooperative?
Papaliwanag ko po yun, Ma'am Ami. Noong 2017-2018 na nilaunch po yung PUB Modernization Program, wala naman po tayong kaagad na perang panggastos po dito sa pambili din sa mga bagong units at binabalangkas pa po ng mga panahon na yon yung mga panuntunan. Bakit po ba masyadong minamadali? Di po ba na yung bangko, hindi naman po agad kami lahat mapapautang. Nung nilaunch po yung 2017-2018, kasalukuyan po kami nagpapa-accredit sa Cooperative Development Authority at saka po sa Office of the Transport Cooperative. It takes more than 1 year or less than 9, hindi po bababa ng 9 months yung pagpapa-accredit po dito. So, inaapura natin na wala pa nga kaming pinangahawakang entity. Paano po namin ito may apply ng consolidation that time? 2018 and 2019. So, 2020, medyo nagluwag po. Doon po tayo nagkaroon ng pagkakataon na mabigyan tayo ng accreditation po ng CDA at ng OTC. Sinubukan po natin na sumunod at mag-comply. Kasamaang palad nga lang po, pinutol po ito sa kasagsagan po at kalagitnaan po ng pagsunod po natin doon sa kanilang mga guidelines o memorandum circulars.
Accreditation pa lang yung binabanggit mo, napaka-komplikado na kaagad, no? Accreditation pa lang yun. Pero yung kapasidad at saka kahandaan ng cooperative, no? Once accredited or kahit hindi pa accredited, kamusta naman yun?
Yun nga po, Sir Robbie, kaka-accredit lang po sa amin. Wala pang pong pondo yung aming kooperatiba, kundi yung pinag-ambag-ambagan lang namin na mabuo ito. So kung sa jeepney, that time is 320 to 350,000 pesos, and sa UB Express po nasa 750,000 pesos. Iyon po, yung mga sinasabi po nila ay may kaakibat po na malalaking gastusin. Minimum lamang po ang sinisingil naming pamasahe. So kailangan po naming maghanda din, mag-ipon para po maitayo itong mga kooperatiba po na ito. Hindi po ito libre. At yung pabalik-balik po namin pagpa-accredit, may mga liaison officers, kung hindi man po namin kayang kami na pumunta doon, may mga liaison officers po kami na kailangan din po namin tustusan.
So mga gaano katagal na
Hindi po kami kumukuha lang ng police clearance, ng NBI clearance, ng birth certificate na the following week o kinabukasan o ngayon yung makukuha mo na, hindi po ganoon.
So gaano katagal pa nga ang kailangan ninyo para kumpleto yung pag-form ng cooperative sa makapag-comply? Mga another 6 months siguro, mga until 2024 kaya?
2024 po yung pinaka-realistic po na panahon na pwede nilang ibigay sa amin, na huwag kaming madaliin. Halimbawa po, nag-file po kami ngayon hanggang December. Yung talagang totally hindi na nakapag-file, ako po, aminado ako at pwedeng hindi natanggapin. Pero ang pakiusap ko po sa LTFRB, sa DOTR, samahan po kaming mga transport leaders na ipaliwanag kung ano ba talaga yung layunin po nito. Marami pong hindi po naiintindihan pa. Kasi labas tayo ng memorandum circular, tapos hayaan natin na mag-interpret po yung mga grupo. Kadalasan po siyempre nagtatanong lang, baka mali pa na pagtanungan. Hindi naman po lahat itong grupo na ito ay ma-entertain po ng LTFRB.
So ang gusto nyo, one cooperative, one route, tapos gusto nyo ma-extend hanggang next year. Yun ang mga gusto nyo mangyari ngayon. Ayaw nyo nung monopolya mo na one cooperative, multiple routes. Hindi kayo papayag doon.
Yes, ma'am. Hindi po kami pumapayag doon. At least po sana, Ma'am Lucy, 3 kooperatiba kung depende po sa dami doon sa isang ruta. Kung maliit lamang po yung kapasidad ng ruta, for example, 15 o 30 lamang yan, pwede na siguro yung isang entity o isang cooperative.
Bakit daw
Pero po pag yan inatandaan,
bakit daw gusto nila nung one cooperative, multiple routes? Ano daw ang advantage?
baka mas mabilis.
Ha?
Baka mas mabilis po yung kita. Baka lang.
Ano pong kita?
Kasi po siyempre, isa na lamang po yung kausap po ng dealers, isa na lamang po ang kausap din na binibigyan po ng LTFRB. Hindi naman po ito maikakailain na ganun po. Siguro mas mabilis nga kung baka trusted na yung mga nauna, hindi din po natin alam bakit po ganun ang nangyayari. Noong 2017, 2018, ang sinabi niya, lahat ng transport association mag-form kayo ng transport cooperative, transport corporation. Sumunod po kanya-kanya. Tapos po, pagdating po unti-unti tumatagal, lalo mo pong pinaliliit yung espasyo ng transport sector na parang gusto mo monopolyo na lamang.
Baka rin kasi gusto nilang pabilisin yung proseso. Diba? Kasi pag isa na lang kausap, isa na lang nag-coordinate, kahit pa paano nga, mas bibilis. Hindi kaya yun lang yun?
Ang iniisip lang po nilang mapabilis, ma'am, mapagaan yung trabaho nila. Hindi po nila tinitignan yung hirap din po namin dito sa ibaba.
Pero hindi ba yun bibilis para rin sa inyo? Kung nag-a-apply kayo, lahat ng papeles, di ba? Isang lugar na lang, tapos isa na lang magpo-process. Di ba nakakatulong nga rin yun sa inyo?
Siguro, ma'am, may mga punto po na nakakatulong. Pero siyempre, kaya nga po, noong una pa ay may kanya-kanyang asosasyon na. So dapat po, yun din ang irespeto natin. At minsan, kung mas malaki, mas mahirap pong ayusin. Kasi marami na po tayong karanasan na nakakausap din ng mga kasamahan. Yung malaki, yung maliit nga lang po. Yung pagpoproseso po, makapabilis siguro. Pero po, pag pinagsama-sama mo po dito sa ground dyan, mas mahirap po at lalo pong nagkakaroon ng,
Okay.
ng hindi pagkakaunawaan.
Okay. Mar, halos wala na tayong oras. Ulitin ko lang, ang DOTR is asking for a dialogue with the transport sector. Pero huling tanong na lang, anong abiso mo sa mga mananakay natin? Anong abiso mo sa mga magko-commute next week?
Ngayon pa lamang po, katulad po ng sabi natin kanina, humihingi na po tayo ng pangunawa sa ating mga mahal na mananakay na kayo po yung pangunahin namin siniserbisyuhan. Pero may pamilya din po kami na kung mawawalan po kami ng hanap buhay din, napakahirap din. Ito po yung paraan lamang namin na mapakinggan po kami ng gobyerno, ng ating Pangulo, ng DOTR sa tamang proseso at kung kami ho ay mapapayagan pa ng mas mahabang panahon, mas makakapaglingkod po kami din sa inyo ng mas mahabang panahon pa na safe at mas convenient po.
Okay. Si Mar Valbuena po. Maraming salamat, Mar.
Thank you.
Salamat, Mark.
Maraming salamat
Yes, sir.
po.
Si Ginoong Valbuena po ang chairman ng Transport Coalition na Manibela. And that's the Monday edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed will keep the conversation going. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.